So we're just remembering all the dynamics of what was going on here. Strahd at this dinner has his bride-to-be, Irina, dressed up like Tatiana, and it seems that she has obviously been charmed by Strahd. We have, of course, members of the party, including Godfrey, who is wearing Sergei's armor. Strahd threatens him for having looted his brother's tomb. He makes it clear their next encounter will not be so amiable as this dinner if Godfrey continues wearing that armor. During the course of this, Strahd is trying to convince the party to back down and not resist, not try to thwart his marriage to Irina, but the party is trying to convince Strahd that there is more going on than he is aware of, that there is some sort of curse enacted by the dark powers at the Amber Temple. Perhaps one in particular that holds sway over him. Leading the charge on this is Tox, who is extremely charmed by Strahd, and having Strahd's best interest in mind is really going to bat on this case of trying to convince Strahd of what is going on. And then, of course, we have paralyzed Shava trying to communicate telepathically with a few members of her party to get a word in edgewise, and we have Gertruda, who is charmed, spoon-feeding her applesauce to try to keep her engaged in what's going on.
I was going to ask, so Gertruda was charmed?
Yes.
Because I would have totally believed that Strahd had just always been nice to her, and she was just happy.
Yeah, I like with 5th edition, they don't have any mechanical callouts that I'm aware of. So I like, actually, perhaps that I didn't read enough of 5th edition to know whether or not this was true. That there's like a check to know if somebody is charmed, because I wanted it to be ambiguous whether she just super actually thought he was super neat or whether she was charmed by him. The truth is that she does think he's super neat without the charm, but, why not have that fail-safe? And Gertrude is a character who specifically will be held as a hostage by Strahd against the party if he is in a position to take advantage of that. She's extremely frail. He would like to eventually, to keep her around and have her as a companion, but if she can be used as an advantage against the party, he is not below leveraging her to do that. I'm personally glad that we didn't really end up in a situation with either party where that turned out to be such a huge thing. Because of how grody it would feel, but they have a number of ideas of how that could be leveraged, and there's just enough going on that we didn't end up being in that position. But Prime convinces Strahd that after his marriage to Irina, I mean, this is him coming around to this, not them making this argument, but once his first priorities have been settled, perhaps it is worth going to the Amber Temple to investigate a little deeper into the specifics of what they are talking about. But just as soon as he comes to this decision, he seems to go blank for a moment or two, and then apparently resets to an earlier point in the conversation before any of this was brought up in the first place. The party confronts him on this and tries to point out what just happened. And he pushes through at first, thinking it's some weird mind game that they're playing, but as they become more insistent on it, he goes blank again and seems to reset to an earlier point again, at which point it seems demonstrated to the party that this is perhaps not the right way to go about what it is that they want to do. Strahd retires.
See, that's where you're wrong. You see, you should have just kept going. Just keep him in a loop, make him have to keep resetting, and just like break his brain.
Yeah.
Just,
we can still be there.
Too many resets, and it damages.
Eventually, I would quit the game, and that's victory of a kind for a party. Yeah.
Yeah, Kay warned me about this in MIB.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Strahd leaves with final warnings to the party. He takes Irina with him, and he leaves them to kind of go over what they've just learned. Oh, he also discovered them earlier on, having access secret rooms behind his fireplace, and he warns them on no uncertain terms not to do that, and that he will not be so kind if he encounters them doing it again. So as soon as he leaves, they begin making plans to do it again. But the first thing that happens before that is that there's a knock on a door, and coming in from a whole nother part of the castle, it's Ismark and Rictavio and Richten and Esmeralda come from exploring through other places. They have a little bit of information about things that they have seen, and they are willing to be caught up on what the party has seen. They seem none the worse for wear and still ready to go. And having put their heads together, they decide to split off once again. So these three have seen there is some sort of glowing, terrible something in the North Tower that perhaps it would be good for the party to check out. They've also dispatched some threats in other parts of the building, the dungeons, and the tower directly above these rooms here, where the witches were, and things like that. And the party says, hey, so one thing you could check on is it has been over an hour now since we left Casimir in the dungeon. It was supposed to be an hour on his resurrection spell, so he should be done by now. If you wanted to go and try to catch up with him, you could get the state of what has happened there. They agree to that. Van Richten removes the paralysis from Shava. I had rolled for that, and it was going to be there for like 3 or 4 hours. So, yeah, it had been 4 hours, and one of them has already elapsed at this point, so he sets her back right, and they descend into the dungeon, at which point we're going to go back to Alpha, who is still in the crypts, and we're going to talk about them a little bit here, because Alpha's doing a lot of exploring in the dungeon. There's just a lot of different things in these different crypts. Some of them are... they just have kind of flavor stuff written in without any traps or combat encounters or treasure or anything like that. But that's not to say that they're totally empty of content, because one of these is just that this guy was like a sled dog racer and he was buried with his sled dogs. So Nyx casts the spell Danse Macabre, and we have now a whole group of mummified sled dogs, zombies, that are going to be fighting with us and journeying with us. So we've picked those up as companions for the time being. Too many of them to name, of course. But as we continue on through here as well, we do start getting into the southernmost crypt, and as we're going door to door, we fight some hellhounds, we fight some spiders, and one member of the party walks around and reads the name inscribed on a tomb door, and it reads Bucephalus the Wonder Horse. Whereupon that crypt door is kicked down from the inside, and the party stands face to face with Strahd's nightmare steed, and they engage in battle. The party is gaining the upper hand. Bucephalus tries to move over in a certain direction, but the party has already, with their canny dungeoneering, sussed out there is some sort of magical trap over by where Bucephalus has gone, and Bucephalus suspiciously jumps over a 10-foot square before landing in front of a portcullised passageway leading off further to the south. So it is with ranged attacks that we dispatch Bucephalus, slaying him and leaving his corpse there. We now do, though, cautiously approach this part of the dungeon, feeling our way around it, doing some tactical jumps to clear over places that we think are magically trapped, where stepping on the floor would be unsafe. And we find that we have come to Strahd's tomb at the bottom part of the Crypts of Ravenloft. He has a coffin that lays in state on a raised stone sort of pedestal. There is a metal portcullis that does not seem to have a way to open it. In reality, there is a lever, but it is inside the chamber and around a corner, so somebody would need to go inside to access that and open it. There are also a number of teleport traps. If we're looking at the slide here, there are these blue circles that note the places where if you step on them, you are teleported away somewhere. And is not, the party doesn't even know that they are teleport traps at this point. They just know they're that there is one magical trap of some sort. They actually haven't found the other two, but they guess that perhaps they are there. They haven't done the work to identify them. Peering into this, we can see the sarcophagus, the coffin. We can see these alcoves at the back. There is this earthen floor in here. What's actually going on in this chamber is that it presumes you're going to open it and come inside. Like maybe you'll open the portcullis with the lever that's inside. Maybe you'll do an incredibly good strength check to heave it open. But if you come inside, this is actually where Strahd's brides are. They sleep beneath the earth in this chamber. And when you come inside, they rise to defend this room and attack you. Action and Daniel are standing here looking through, and they go, "That's Strahd's coffin. Hey, Peregrine, get over here!" And they all shoot ranged attacks at Strahd's coffin. And I think we use a fireball or
Peregrine cast fireball.
Yeah, so we blow it to absolute smithereens.
It was very personal for her.
Yeah, and the party has done something very dangerous here, which is that they have surprised me. They have out-thought me. They have outsmarted me. They have used their resources in a clever way to protect themselves from possible danger. And this has made me feel very stupid and made me very angry. So I do something that I hadn't been planning to do. On the random encounter table this entire time, it's been the case that if I roll a 20 on a d20, the random encounter is Strahd. And that he ambushes you. And the way that they write it is that he attacks at the best possible time from the most advantageous possible position. You need a passive perception of 20 or higher to know that he is coming. Otherwise, he gets a full surprise round. None of them have that. So I'm ruling that, yes, Strahd had something that let him know that you blew up his coffin so that he could come and do retribution upon you. So he appears, he gets a surprise round action, and is here on his own to fight the party to the best of his ability. In his surprise round action, he runs up to, I think, it's one at a time. He actually does pretty well in initiative, so he does both of these pretty quickly. He grabs Ismark and Daniel and pushes them onto one of those magical traps. They are teleported away, vanishing from the battlefield. And in their place, in the exact locations where they were, are wights, which are summoned by the trap. So for each person who disappeared, we now have a wight to contend with. So all of a sudden, the party is in battle with Strahd. The foundations of the castle are, being blasted by fireballs and all this. There are bats that come and join the fight to come in on Strahd's side. Some highlights just going off my dome from this fight. Van Richten summons a spiritual guardian that has the form of Irina, like a 10-foot tall glowing Irina, and tries to smack Strahd. Toy Boy jumps in front of a fireball that would have knocked Nyx out and reduces the damage that she takes. He is nearly destroyed, but she is allowed to keep going from that. He is fully using his legendary actions here. He's using them to move without provoking while it's not his turn. He's using them to do extra attacks. And he has the advantage of surprise, and having taken out a couple of party members, he also tells them that the missing party members are in incredible danger as they speak. At every moment the party spends fighting him, they are in worse and worse danger. But the party sticks on him, and they actually end up pushing back really hard. They do a lot of damage. Eventually, he begins backing off. Another aspect of this fight is that Gertruda is with them at this time, and this is her first time seeing Strahd fight. I actually don't remember at all why Gertruda is with them. I think that I had a moment where she was like, yes, I would so love to go on an adventure around the castle, and I tried to make it as obvious as possible what a bad idea this was. And they said, yeah, absolutely, we'll bring you. I also am pretty sure that at some point she took damage from something. That probably already happened before this point. The Banshee. Yeah, so mechanically Gertruda should have just been killed by the Banshee. And I was like, no, this is not the right moment for that. She's unconscious. Things are very scary and very dire, and you're able to bring her back. Gertruda has 4 hit points, you guys. Don't bring her on missions. She was revived, but she's been shaken up a little bit. And now seeing Strahd fight, this image of him as an elegant protector is confronted by what she's seeing here. And she tries to appeal to Strahd's humanity to say, like, wait, like, can we talk this out? And he is trying to tell her, like, you don't understand everything that is at work. You don't understand. Gertrude, just back off and let me handle this and all will be all right. But her being in such emotional distress does seem to get to him a little bit. They are also, the party is at this point going full just teasing, full just psychological warfare. Bucephalus, his dead horse, is right here. And Action, who is normally stoically above this kind of stuff, I think the line is, killed your horse. And everybody's just poking him straight in his butthole just as hard as they can. And eventually he does begin to withdraw. He's using his legendary actions to move away. The party gives chase, and before he is able to juke off between the northern crypts, somebody gets a final shot at him that hits him pretty hard. And when it does, there is a moment where it seems like time slows, and it seems like Strahd is reeling really hard from that attack, and then he recoups himself, but there is this flash of sickly red and gold. The castle trembles, and there is an echo that permeates the entire structure, as if the castle itself is moaning in pain. Strahd is very frustrated, but he does rush on. A couple of members of the party give chase. Strahd escapes through one of his own traps. Somebody tries to follow him and slides down into a dungeon cell, waist deep in water, at which point he has already escaped beyond that, and we realize to our fury that he is not catchable at this point, and that his regeneration will return him eventually to full hit points. But we've used a number of his spell slots. We've also encountered a seeming defense that he had upon himself that it seems like now has been spent. We had to do a tremendous amount of damage to Strahd in order to get there, but it seems like maybe something that was defending him is no longer something he can wield against us. However, this triumph does not come without a cost. As we now explore the crypts again, we can hear a faint voice shouting from one of the few ones that we have not yet explored, and finding our way to it and looking down into a deep pit within it, we see Ismark, who is very bloodied, looking up at us. We descend down in here and find that he is absolutely surrounded by destroyed wights. I'm going to tell you what happened here. These 3 teleport traps around Strahd's sarcophagus, each one of them will teleport you into a coffin that is 40 feet below one of the crypts. There is a shaft that goes into a cavern chamber, which I have a separate map of. The shaft has slippery rock walls. It's very difficult to climb. Inside each sarcophagi down in this crypt, there is a wight, and when you are teleported into their sarcophagi, they switch places with you, which is why those 2 of them appeared to join battle with Strahd and had to be destroyed there. There are 15 such sarcophagi in this crypt, meaning that when Daniel and Ismark pushed their way out of their crypts, 13 other wights pushed their way out of their sarcophagi and swarmed them. Ismark is alive. All the wights have been destroyed, but it is at the cost of Daniel, who gave his life, putting himself at the forefront, all 4 of his levels, dealing as much radiant damage as possible to hold them off.
Did quite about the if there's 3 teleport traps, if they get activated more than 3 times, do they still do wights?
There are up to 15 wights that they can summon. Okay. Yeah, those traps, they were not expended, just nobody stepped on them again after that first time. We could have been summoning way more wights in this fight if the fight had stayed in that location or people had rushed around there. But for the most part, people were trying to get angles to do ranged attacks on Strahd and forcing him to come to them, so he wasn't able to leverage that. But yeah, y'all could have been fighting 15 wights in that fight, which would have saved Daniel for sure.
Well, it also what we should have done was immediately all hit the teleport traps, and then we would all be down there.
You all would have. That would have been a very handy way to escape Strahd. Would have been
Yeah.
just immediately jump into the teleport traps. He would have not chased you. He would have been like, "Well, okay."
The problem is we didn't know where they went, so we were like, maybe it just drops you into a pit of something really bad. Or
Yeah,
something.
that crypt was kind of in the middle. I think it was lower north side. So if somebody had purposefully taken an action to be like, I listen really hard to see if I can hear Ismark or hear Daniel, or if they had been, I think I had somebody do a perception check when they were a little closer up there, but I was like, you would need to do pretty well, I think, to hear this, because 40 feet down beyond a closed door. And there's sounds of combat in the other direction, so we didn't quite get it there. So this is a somber moment, and at the end of a moment of silence, I ask everybody in the Alpha chat to just spam, to at George, and to spam the letter F. And George almost instantly joins the call and says, "What the fuck?" So we didn't have the time or the wherewithal to give him the full context of everything, but having him there for that moment and no other Daniel moment for any of the rest of the campaign was pretty great. I think we had not perhaps even told him that Daniel had been found again. I don't know if we'd gotten around to that. So
Can't remember.
yeah.
He was very surprised about the whole thing.
Yeah. So, I'll be talking a little bit about what exactly happened with this reddened golden flash and the pillar stone of Ravenloft shaking and the castle itself moaning in pain, because it actually relates to the next little bit of what Prime did, which is what we're going to segue into here. So we remember perhaps from mentioning this with Alpha before, that in the North Tower of Ravenloft, there is a beating heart that has a crystalline sort of aspect to it and a sickly radiance that emanates from it. There are magical halberds that line the walls of the upper stories leading up to it. And this definitely felt like a sort of cursed place. Prime, sneaking out from Strahn's library, find a passage into this tower, and they're at about the halfway point here up to the top, and looking up they see this, and they see something that Alpha didn't see because things have happened a little differently in this campaign. What has happened off screen since Strahd appeared in Vallaki is after Shava told him that she got the Sword of Sunlight from the were-ravens, he did a little investigating into the patterns of ravens in Barovia and into certain individuals who had always seemed pretty suspicious to him, but he couldn't put his finger on exactly what their deal was. And suspicions having been confirmed, he conducted a midnight raid and silently abducted a couple of key players. And those two people, Erwin and Danica Mardukov, are now in this tower at the highest level, feet from this pulsing heart, on their knees, their eyes blank, facing this thing, and we can see tethers of this sickly light emanating from their chest, strands that connect them to the heart itself, as if something is being pulled from them into the heart, which they sit in catatonia, unable to resist. As we enter the tower and see this, there is a faint rumbling, and creatures begin to make their way in various entrances at different points of the tower, scrabbling vampire spawn, ex-adventurers who once came here to defeat Strahd and were turned into these monstrosities by him. If any members of the party had at some point been killed and taken by Strahd in such a final way as to indicate like he was really done with them, or like had turned over to his side, but not in a way where they kept any leverage, this easily could have been the fate of such a character and may have been met in Castle Ravenloft in a situation much like this, replacing one of these perhaps. We have a couple of characters who have a little more vertical mobility and decide they want to respond to this Hart and Mardukov situation a little more aggressively. As the others who are not able to follow hang back to try to keep the vampire spawn off of them. Shava and Dr. Flint dimension door to the very top of the tower to try to reach Erwin and Danica as fast as possible. What they haven't realized, because they haven't done the slow scouting that Alpha did, is that there are a great number of animated halberds that now summon energy into themselves and come chasing after them. Also, when they reach this highest level of the tower, they find there is a doorway behind them that leads to a walkway that stretches across to a tower behind them. Whenever we look at Castle Ravenloft, we can kind of see there's one snub tower that ends in a battlement, and then it has a little walkway that crosses over to a taller tower. So this is the taller tower, and coming from the battlemented top of the other tower, shuffling up behind the Mardukovs, is this abomination, the animated armor of Strahd, a loathsome construct that he has summoned into being with his fiendish magics, and which crackles with electricity. It hoists a great sword, which it seeks to wield in combat. So the two of us who have Dimension Door appear have to face all of these. Yes.
Had Prime encountered any of the animated weaponry and stuff before this?
Any of the animated what, sorry?
Like weapons.
I don't think so.
No, in their first fight with Strahd in the chapel, he had cast animated objects on a sword that he had and had attacked them, but I don't think it was obvious to them that that is what had happened. So they hadn't,
When we levitated up to check out the heart, we got close to it, and then we saw a bunch of weapons just kind of on the walls, and it reminded us of the hallway that we went through that had a bunch of animated swords that attacked us, and we said, we're pretty sure what those are going to do, actually.
Yes, that's
true. We're just going to leave this alone. We're just going to table this.
That was an encounter that Alpha had in one of the secret passageways of Ravenloft that Prime never got to because it is beyond the dining room. Where Prime never went. So yeah, I hadn't even considered that was in the back of y'all's mind when you saw this but yeah, that's another example of that butterfly effect thing.
In action, we're like, if we keep going any higher, those things are going to fly at us. We don't want that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We said, nope, let's get out of here.
Prime is also coming in here, and the appearance is that perhaps this is a situation with some immediacy and some stakes to it. Certainly the tower seems to... they're coming at a higher level of the tower. Alpha was at the very bottom, and very cautiously at people ascending using flight. Stepping out onto the stairs at this mid-level, there seems to be a immediate reaction from the tower to their presence here. It seems to be what summons the vampire spawn. And we have the Mardukovs in danger at the top, so we're trying to react to this at some speed. But now those two have to fight off a whole bunch of threats here and go toe-to-toe with this creature. We have... What's my next slide here? Sometimes... Oh, yeah. So, as they are dealing with that up top, and other members of the party are fighting vampire spawn in the mid-levels, there is another echo from the bottom of the tower. And looking down there, a figure runs out and looks up. And this is... in the book that this happens, and was totally up to me when this would happen, Vladimir Horngard of Argynvostholt is a revenant, and destroyed as he was in the earlier fight with the party, all it takes for him to come back is for his spirit to find another corpse to inhabit. He has not forgotten their mission to destroy Strahd, and he still considers it his mission to keep Strahd in this state of perpetual torment and continuing his existence in Barovia. He has tracked the party here, and now from the bottom of this tower is running up the stairs to try to stop them, requiring Sir Godfrey to descend the stairs to meet his old commander in melee. Vladimir Horngard, is also worth saying, is... I can't remember if he's... I don't think he's one of the fated allies, but there is a circumstance wherein you can get him to fight Strahd with you. What it requires is to find the skull of Argynvost, the silver dragon who founded Argynvostholt and the Order of the Silver Dragon, a skull which Strahd has in his dungeon. If you return it to Argynvostholt and inter it in its appointed tomb, and then light the beacon of Argynvostholt, then at that point, Vladimir Horngard will join you. He does an extra 4d6 damage whenever he strikes Strahd, because he hates Strahd so much. And he's already a huge motherfucker. So at that point, if you've gone way out of your way to like make Argynvostholt your main quest and like go to Castle Ravenloft, retrieve this thing, and carry it back with you somehow, it weighs a tremendous amount, all the way across the map back to this, then I think it's their reward for having engaged in all that.
Also, does the beacon do something?
Lighting the beacon of Argynvostholt, we covered this in the epilogue for Prime. If you do the whole Argynvostholt side quest and light the beacon, it gives every creature in Barovia a +1 armor class and saves against Strahd and his allies. And maybe that applies to some other things too, but I can't remember them right now. So it is a echoing effect that blasts through the land and definitely signals that you are people of virtue and that you have come to put an end to this situation. But unfortunately, at this moment, Vladimir Horngard is still after the party and is something that has to be dealt with. At the top of the tower, we have Dr. Flint and we have Shava fighting around the edges of this walkway. I think this picture pretty nicely exemplifies the terrain that we were dealing with here. We're able to work down the numbers on these halberds. We are also, though, and this is to their credit, that the two of them immediately, despite the incredible personal dangers to themselves, still make this their priority. We are targeting as many attacks as possible at the heart itself. What we find when we do this is that once per round, when we damage the heart, and we can damage it, it seems to react to taking hits. It groans and the entire tower shudders. So once per round, everybody in the tower has to do a dexterity saving throw or fall prone. It's not a high DC, but this is 5th edition where you can, if you have to do enough of these, you're bound to fail one sooner rather than later. We get the idea that it would be a very bad thing to fail one of these saves while directly next to the edge. That would possibly result in something worse than simply falling prone. Dr. Flint clashes with Strahd's animated armor and tries many times valiantly to push it from the precipice. He does not succeed. This is an extremely strong creature, and I roll pretty well. It then turns and tries to push Dr. Flint from the precipice. This is like an over 200-foot fall easily, so a very dangerous place to fall from, but it just barely fails. And as we're locked in this struggle up here, Shava is able to Misty Step, I think, away from the melee and take some shots over here.
1 hit point or something like that.
Yes.
I just hopped around like a bunny on Misty Steps. Just, you can't catch me. You can't catch me. Boom. Hit the heart again.
Extremely damaged. And talks from below, given a moment away from the vampires because Godfrey is defending him, Cinder is defending him. He shoots, I believe, a fireball up into the heart.
Because I remember he was like gonna, I think, do another chill touch against a vampire spawn, and I was like, could you fireball the heart? Or like, could you attack the heart? And he goes, oh yeah, fireball.
In the interest of defending Shava with her precious 1 hit point and rescuing Dr. Flint, who has been pushed up to the precipice and is just barely holding on as the animated armor is assaulting him, we fireball the heart, and it's massive overkill at this point. It does an incredible amount of damage. It would have been really, really devastating when the heart was at full hit points, and because of the chip damage, just means it's a huge, absolutely devastating strike to this heart, which
Can I jump in just really quick? The reason Shava had 1 hit point is because Shava had this cool feature as a warlock of essentially a whole bunch of death wards that everyone got once a day, but they all went away after somebody used one. And so Shava had gotten hit to 0 hit points, popped that like fake death ward, had 1 hit point bouncing around, and no one else could also use it anymore for the rest of the day. This is about to be relevant.
Yeah. And also, importantly, when I was having that shove contest with the armor, I rolled pretty bad, or like I rolled kind of like okay, but not like good. I can't remember if I could already know the result or not, but I had used Flash of Insight or whatever, the artificer thing.
Flash of Genius.
Flash of Genius. Yeah, I used Flash of Genius on myself, which was required to succeed the strength saving throw, which means that I had used my reaction, which was a big deal.
Oh no.
Because when the heart ruptures, it is destroyed, and this is a very good thing for the party, because the Heart of Sorrow is a necromantic construct created by Strahd, crafted by dark magics that he discovered in the secret library in the Amber Temple. While it is tethered to him, he has an extra pool of hit points, basically. It increases his hit points by 50, and can be used in ways to make it look like he is not taking damage. I think I made, maybe he's simply immune to your damage. I don't think any of you were actually convinced of that by any description that I gave, to make it seem like your attacks simply weren't, gonna stick, like you would break his jaw and then it would just snap back into place, because he also has regeneration, so you would think it's just because of that. But it's basically another pool of hit points for him that make him a significant threat. Alpha has overcome this in their battle with him, and once the hit points that it gives him, which are he can choose when the heart takes the damage and when he doesn't, once those are gone, the heart is destroyed. So instead of coming here and fighting the heart, Alpha just had to fight Strahd a time that Prime did not, and he had 50 additional hit points in that fight. None of his allies or other resources to bear, but an ambush attack that was extremely harrowing. So instead of that, Prime is here trying to take this out before they encounter him, and they succeed. But as the heart is ruptured and destroyed, it causes the tower to shudder one final time, which means that Dr. Flint and Shava have to make dexterity saves one final time, trying to hit a 10, and neither of them succeed. And they both plummet over 200 feet to the bottom of the tower below.
And I go, "Don't worry, I have Featherfall."
But no reaction. And both of them impact on the floor. Dr. Flint is knocked unconscious. Shava is killed outright by massive damage.
Oh boy.
It becomes immediately apparent that Dr. Flint is the only member of the party who has any healing. Certainly, he's the only one who can cast the Revivify spell. And with him unconscious at the bottom of the tower, that's not the best possible news for Shava. Slightly better news is that with the heart destroyed, the two people up there who were tethered to it now blink awake. And Erwin and Danica Martikov instantly take in this situation, and they jump into action. Danica transforms into a raven and flies like a rocket down to the bottom to alight between these two to try to stand over them and protect them and guide threats away from them. Erwin turns to the animated armor, looking down over the side of the precipice at where Dr. Flint has gone, and he successfully pushes it off the edge, and it falls 200 feet and slams into the floor, where it is still barely up. is
my
not
God.
destroyed by this. So now Danica is down there with it as it begins to get to its feet. And the rest of the party realizes they're going to have to make some moves to get through this. So at the middle of the tower, Cinder is locked in battle with one of these vampire spawn. She has radiant damage. She has big hits. I think she's fighting 2 of them by herself at a certain point, and a bunch of halberds came after her as well. So she's just doing everything she can every turn to do as much damage as possible and work through things. Tox is here doing support with chill touches, with range damage, trying to handle things. And Sir Godfrey is pulling weight, soloing Vladimir Hornguard. And as powerful as Vladimir Hornguard is, he has forgotten all of his paladin abilities, which Godfrey has retained. And with his magic weapon spell, with his smite damage that overcomes Vladimir's regeneration, he is able, difficult though it may be, to vanquish his former commander, destroying this body, and so his revenant spirit will rush off to inhabit a new one once again. But it takes us a while to get here.
Importantly,
Yeah.
I also forgot that Godfrey did have healing spells, which would have come in handy at this point. But
Yeah, we're in an unfortunate spot where we don't, because it hasn't really come up. We haven't needed this of Godfrey at this point. Godfrey has Cure Wounds, and as a paladin is capable of casting Revivify. He doesn't have it prepared. So we're kind of having some meta conversations here of, are the rest of the party aware of the Revivify scroll that Dr. Flint has on his person? Is Godfrey specifically aware of this? This is something that none of the players are aware of. So we're trying to figure out, like, are the characters aware of this? Can we talk through it? Godfrey is in a position eventually, we talk through it, we realize, okay, we determine, sure, let's say that we recall that Dr. Flint has this scroll of Revivify. At the very least, maybe we can get down there and because our clock has been ticking for a while now, all these people we've been fighting have a lot of hit points. Revivify only works within 1 minute of death, and we are coming to that timer with Shava. Dr. Flint has stabilized, but she is very much in danger. Tox is knocked out in the fight up the tower, so it is just Cinder and Godfrey. As we finish off the last threat here, Godfrey runs and perhaps a round later than he honestly could have and still survived, throws himself down the tower, crashing into the floor, and gets up and runs to Dr. Flint's body. We have 1 round left to revive Shava. This is the last one. And Dr. Flint has 3 scrolls on his person, and Godfrey does not have the requisite skills to identify any of them. So, but we are establishing that Godfrey knows that Dr. Flint has these scrolls and is aware of the Revivify one. So I say, Godfrey, I need you to do a DC 7 intelligence check to correctly choose the right scroll on this round. And we get a 5.
Oh boy.
Scroll of Fireball?
I think that we didn't go so far as actually using any of the scrolls.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there were ones that he could use.
Yeah, I think
and so Shava died.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Wow.
So-
That's really rough.
Cinder did put the oh my god, what is it called? The staff, the Golthia staff in Dr. Flint's hand and tried to hit herself with it
yeah.
in order to heal me.
Yeah, we had a rules conversation about this staff where if you strike a creature with it, you gain temporary hit points. And
Yeah.
the technicalities around being struck with it or you are actually striking somebody. And we just had an unfortunate few technicalities around the timeline here. But it does end with the 1 minute passing by and Shava has not been revivified. But as Godfrey and Danica Marnikov stand over her body, Danica is holding a sword that she has picked up and pointed at this creature, which started to come toward her and then stopped. And this animated armor has been behaving extremely weird. It's been making all kinds of gestures. And it, like these groaning, painful sounds emanating from somewhere within. And this is because Shava's ghost has possessed it. It is incapable of speech and is not having an easy time communicating, but given the fact that it seems to no longer be a combatant and other actions it's taken, they determine that maybe everything is okay. They dispatch a final vampire spawn. They are keeping a careful eye on this armor. Maybe we tie up the armor. We try to take more control of this situation, but we're having a grim acceptance of what has happened here, and it's not particularly helped by what happens next. At the very bottom of this tower, there is a stairwell that comes up from the larders below, and we hear somebody now ascending these stairs. They come into view, and it is our companions, Rudolph Van Richten and Ismark, and they are extremely injured and look extremely weary. And Ismark carries over his shoulder what has happened, they let the party know, is that they went down into the catacombs, where Casimir Velikov was last seen attempting to resurrect his long-dead sister. What happened, so they surmise, is that he succeeded.
Oh boy.
And Petrina Velikov has taken control of the situation since then. What nobody knew at the time of her death, and perhaps they would have felt better about everything if they had. This is not a truth that Casimir would have had an easy time looking for or accepting, is that Petrina didn't just want Strahd's attentions because she was a simp for him, but because she saw him as a kindred spirit. She knew that he was a fellow practitioner of the forbidden dark arts and a wielder of dark magic nearly parallel to her own abilities. She is, in fact, fully resurrected, an archmage necromancer. By the time that Van Richten, Ismark, and Esmeralda found her down there, Casimir was already dead, in retribution for his murder of her. His fanatical devotion in recent years to coming and resurrecting her has been a seed planted in his mind by her malevolent spirit reaching across Barovia, and she has used him to resurrect herself. She now plans to kill all who oppose Strahd, go and usurp Irina's place as his bride, and for them to rule Barovia together as its dark lord and queen. And the final obstacle to this is Van Richten, Ismark, and Esmeralda. They engaged in a terrible battle, and at the end of it, Petrina was killed. But with her dark powers, including her 9th level spell slots used for things like Slay Living and Finger of Death, that battle was not without cost. And Esmeralda was killed. And so we come to this moment with a lot of tragedy and some choices that we have to make. We have some resources available to us, and we have some things that are yet to be revealed. Something that actually came up in the battle is that Erwin Mardukov was one of the first people down to the bottom of the tower, not aware of like scrolls or something people may have, but he was able to spend a round before Godfrey got there kind of rifling through people's possessions to try to see if they had a potion or anything that could be used to heal Dr. Flint or revive Shava. And something he pulls out is the green gem that was taken from the heart of Winter Splinter. This is one of his family's gems, and it is something he is all too familiar with, and in fact has a tragic history with. We recall that the family now has 2 of these gems. They used to have 3, and the vague story told about that is that it disappeared sometime in their lifetimes. In fact, it was Erwin who was responsible for the gem's disappearance, and he is extremely mum, for the most part, about how that happened. But he relates that whole history now, shameful as it is to him, because he realizes that it may help them in this time. These gems are kind of artifacts of growth and life and resurgence. This is why the family buries them on their vineyard, because it gives this life energy into the soil that helps the grapes grow better. Normally in Barovia, just growing the same crop over generations, it wouldn't take quite so well. But they have continued to flourish as a family because of these gems. Erwin, in his youth, took one of these gems and was experimenting with it to try to determine its properties. He found a dead raven and tried to use it on the raven to see if it would do anything, and found that it did. It raised the raven from the dead. And when it did that, the gem crumbled into dust. And he was so ashamed at having done this that he just told his family that he lost it, rather than admit this was a purposeful, accidental thing that he did, that he felt like was, obviously good to have raised the raven, but not at the expense of, what this gem meant to his family. So he tells the party, you could use this gem to raise somebody from the dead, I believe, at the expense of the gem. Which, if we can destroy Strahd, that will be worth it. Van Richten also has a single scroll of Raise Dead. So we could raise both of these women right now, if we were willing to permanently sacrifice this gem. But Erwin knows something else about the gem. He says in his experimentation, before destroying the one that he had, he found that you could use it if you short rested around it. Then you could short rest, but get the benefits of a long rest. That this is something that would work once per week, and while the gem was in remission from that, you could not use it for any other purpose, its magic would be dormant. So we could either use this to long rest the entire party in an hour, and not have to wait another whole 8-hour shift to continue on, because we now at this point know that Strahd plans to marry Irina before that will happen. He has asserted the timeline since the dinner that this is going to be happening sooner rather than later. Or we can use it to raise somebody from the dead. We kind of have to make that choice. And the party deliberates about it, and it is Van Richten who finally says to them, take my scroll, we will use this to raise Shava, and then use the gem to get a long rest and go to destroy Strahd. I will take Esmeralda, who is still dead. I don't know why I did this with the eyes on the second slide here. And he accepts that this is the right thing to do. He believes that putting his faith in the party to finish this battle without Esmeralda is the best way to ensure victory. But having made this decision, all the fight seems to have gone out of him. He seems to have used most of his spell slots already in his fight with Petrina down in the crypt and in healing people just now. And it seems like he is not up to continuing this journey with them. We also still have our, I don't know why I put him in this slide, and I think I had this animation on the first slide of him falling from the tower, so he's always going to fall now. I didn't remove it later on. So he kind of elects to take himself and Esmeralda out of the party for now. He is not willing to continue, but with this, the others, they may raise Shava, and they may have a long rest, and they can keep going. Shava's also, I don't know what's going on with the animations on the eyes here. Yeah. So, it's probably worth saying, this being the final recap, that between you guys having the session where Shava dies, we end one session with ending the fight and determining, yes, we weren't in time for Revivify. We ended right there. Erwin had already pulled the gem from the gear. So that had actually happened. So everything that happened here in this session with the gem and its history and its abilities was something I made up between the sessions.
That's great.
Because I specifically wanted you guys to have to make a choice at this moment, basically between being at full capacity or allowing Esmeralda to stay dead. And because, and we'll talk about this more, Curse of Strahd does this thing a lot, where they say, here's something mysterious, and then they move on without, and refusing to explain it. So they say that the family had 3 gems, and that they kind of vaguely say that Erwin lost one in their youth. And actually, if you ever found any friction between him and his father has never fully forgiven him for this. And it's the point of some strife between them. And it fully has no explanation for what happened. And they don't even go as far as to say you should make up something, which I think is honestly more effective to simply dangle this and then not explain it. I think it lights a greater fire within you to think, well, why would this have happened? What would have been the consequence? So it's something that they do actually quite a bit, and we'll talk about it a little later on past this moment.
And that was so that's clearly not the function of those gems in alpha. It just wouldn't work that way. So now we didn't miss out on having that.
Yeah, if you guys had asked about it before this happened in Prime, I would have been like, no, no, it's just I don't know, it's just a
He lost it somewhere.
Yeah, he lost it. Yeah, so in fact, many times we had been at the verge of like really getting into that content because people were like, well, what happened to the 3rd gem? Did they also take it? And the Marty Cubs with both groups had to be like, no, we were already missing that gem, Erwin. This is nothing you need to take action on right now. I think there was still the moment where people were like, well, could we still find it? What if Strahd has the 3rd gem? What if it's in his crypts somewhere? And I was like, ooh, maybe. But you could really put the farm back in order if you had that 3rd gem. So it was very much something that I thought would give a little extra something to this moment. Because as it stood, we did only have the 1 Scroll of Raised Dead that Van Richten had. And I had planned for this to be the penultimate big fight before the Strahd showdown, but it took way more out of the party than I expected, purely because we unfortunately, both of you failed that DC 10 dexterity save and fell from the tower. I think everything would have been pretty okay if that hadn't happened right then in exactly that way. So I was hoping to pull it back from that edge a little bit. Because again, this was an encounter where I had kind of added some things in. It is supposed to be that the tower does shudder when you do stuff with the heart. I think it's like once per round. It's supposed to shake and there's a chance of you falling. The vampire spawn do come in. The halberds do animate. So I just realized at this point we were never going to go just explore the battlements, which is where the animated armor is. He's patrolling the walls. And at some point, Vladimir Horngard was supposed to come back, and we were running out of time and good opportunities for that to happen. And this was a big enough arena that it would give Godfrey, in particular, something to do. I like when Godfrey has a big meat thing to smack really hard and justify being there. So I had felt like it was a bit my fault for putting all this up against you guys. So I wanted to bounce us out of that. So we do this. We bring everybody back into the more comfortable rooms, and we revive Shava, and we begin our short rest, which is actually a long rest. Going back downstairs into the crypts with Alpha, they are also getting through the fallout of their encounter. So there's with Strahd, where they've lost Daniel, and they have expended a significant amount of resources here. We were really trying very hard to run Strahd down and kill him as he was fleeing, because, of the damage he had done to us and all the spells we had done. So there's some frustration at not having been able to choke that out. And we have this area of the crypts that we come back to, and it's, if you come down into the crypts from the chapel or from the high tower, and you look straight across, there is this one crypt with all these stained glass windows, and it is the crypt of King Barov and Queen Ravenovia, Strahd's parents. And this room has a bit of a thing going on where there are these 2 statues that flank the entrance, and there is this thin film of blue light that goes in between them, which is pretty obviously something, but we can't really make a good idea of what it is. What this blue light is it, I think this is something where they write, I think the way they write it in the book is that you can only enter if you are lawful good. If you are any other alignment, you are bamfed away by the blue light. It does not allow you to pass. You could try some tricky things to get around it, but that's what its primary thing is. I kind of because, we don't have solidified alignments in here, I kind of firm this into, like, pure of heart, like how, like, innocent or idealistic or just generally kind of pure you are, to get away from the minutiae. Like, maybe you would have a super battle-scarred person. So an example of this is Rudolf van Richten, who is on paper lawful good, but knowing what we know about him and how he operates and his history, and this is especially true in Alpha for how Luke is playing him as a very haunted person who understands his kind of morally gray outlook. This is, I think, he would not think of himself as being exceptionally pure. So we have certain characters who try to walk through, like Nyx is able to walk through. I think I would have absolutely let Lucian walk through, and he was never at any point brave enough to try. But a bunch of other people are bounced back. It seems intermittent. Gertrude is able to waltz in with no problem. So we're like, okay, we don't understand this. We do find out that the smaller people can just squeeze around the asses of the statues. There is enough room back there that they can foomp in. But a couple of us decide that they don't want to do what the others are doing, which is short resting in this tomb. So Van Richten is staying outside to keep watch. Maybe action with him, I can't recall. But a couple of us have posted out up there, where the others are going into the crypt to short rest and kind of look around. Something that happens while we are short resting is... two things happen that I'm going to mention. One is that Van Richten feels this cold air upon him suddenly, like a very cool draft that raises the hairs on the back of his neck. And because of this, he notices that a creature is approaching, and he's not surprised when a number of figures step out from the shadows and accost the party. One of them we recognize from Peregrine's misadventures in the castle. She's able to call him out immediately. We also saw him not that long ago up in the high tower, pushing Ismark down a shaft. This is Escher, and he has brought with him the brides of Strahd, whom we did not encounter in Strahd's crypt room, and therefore I'm pushing to encounter here because we got to get some time with Strahd's brides here. So they converge on the people who are keeping guard outside of the tomb, while those who are within it it's incumbent on them to use ranged attacks or to push forward to help those members of the party. Escher is kind of standing back and baiting, like he's kind of taunting and pulling some attacks his way, but he does not immediately push up and be aggressive. He kind of leaves that to these brides who do run forward. And it actually only takes a couple of rounds for it to be clear to the brides that the battle is going against them. And Escher continues to not partake. He is taking the dodge action behind them. And they tell him like join in. And he's like, "Ooh, no, sorry, dears. I really don't want to." And it ends with them cursing his name as the PCs destroy them. And then Escher says to the PCs, "You're welcome. I've brought you Strahd's brides, and you've eliminated them for me. I convinced them that I was going to help them kill you, but really I have betrayed them to you. Here's the deal. I see Irina as a threat to my position as Strahd's consort. I don't want to end up forgotten in a crypt down here. So even more than you, perhaps, I really don't want Irina to marry Strahd. I want to help you interfere and perhaps get her out." Escher is imagining, really, that the party will be forced into a situation if they try to intervene with the wedding, where they will realize Strahd outmatches them and they will simply take Irina and escape. Or maybe he can engineer some situation in the conflict where Irina is simply killed. But he certainly thinks that without the PCs involving themselves, the wedding will just go ahead as planned, and that will be very bad for him. So he's hoping to put a wrench in it somehow. And he's concocted this plan to get in here and do this. In Prime, as they short rest in the grand bedroom, a very similar thing happens where the doors all open from various sides and Escher and the brides are standing there. And this is our first time ever meeting Escher in this game. And he's coming in a window from outside on the battlements. And he's like, yes, attack them, my pretties, haha. And in the very first round of combat, the very top of initiative, Sir Godfrey pulls out the Amulet of Ravenkind. And pretty much every vampire fails their save against it, and they are all paralyzed, including Escher. Before Escher is able to make it clear that he does not intend to attack, before Escher can make it clear his plan, which is exactly the same in this game, he is paralyzed for 3 consecutive rounds, and he is beaten absolutely to death. As are the rest of the brides. It's a bit harrowing because not everybody was fully healed. We were waiting on the long rest to do that for us. But a whole party is there back to back in one room, able to leverage themselves, and the Amulet of Ravenkind makes this absolutely trivial. The paralysis that it puts in means that many of the spawn are able to be effortlessly dispatched, and this is our final fight in Prime before hitting level 10. So coming off of this, they are able to jump to that, which was not exactly the same in Alpha. We have not hit level 10 just
Hang
yet.
on. What exactly was he going to offer us?
Well, in Alpha, as the rest of the brides are dispatched, Escher says, I'm betrayed them and didn't help kill you, so you should be thankful already for that. But now if there's any information that you would like, I know this castle intimately. I know Strahd intimately. Whatever you think would give you enough of an advantage to go and do whatever it is you're going to do, I'd be happy to tell that to you. And the party does ask him things like, well, what are some advantages we could find? And kind of exploring what they know, he finds that they are unaware that there is a secret room going back to this, on this level of the castle, he says to them, there is a secret room that leads into a vault, into Strahd's treasury. In here, you may find a great number of magical items that will surely aid in your battle against Strahd. This is perhaps the most significant piece of information that he tells them. But they really don't trust him.
Nice to get to go there before your final fight.
Well, we'll talk more about that. Yeah. They make it clear they still think he's a dickhead and would rather kill him, so he doesn't spend too much more time loitering here. He kind of slinks back off into the shadows and leaves the party to finish their short rest, which they spend a little time tentatively exploring in here. They actually push the lids off the sarcophagi and find that in their coffins, the remains of King Barov and Queen Ravenovia have been magically preserved since the days of their deaths. They still lay there looking quite placid. So Nyx raises both of them as zombies. And it seems like the preserving magic of this chamber gives them a little bit of their mental faculties still. And the party starts to talk to them, saying things like, I believe the way they start this is they say, your son is like going crazy. Your son needs to be stopped. And they go, oh no, what has he done this time? Oh, he's just, the trouble with that boy is that he's always been so soft, like a willow. I wish he was more like his brother. And they go, wait, we're sorry, who we're talking about? And they said, well, what has Sergei done? We assume that Sergei has fucked up in some way. Is Strahd around? Maybe Strahd could set him right. And they go, oh, okay. Well, no, actually, it is Strahd who is the problem. He has this woman, and he's basically kidnapped her, and he's going to make her into his bride. And King Barov goes, ah, yes. A proud tradition of the kings in our land. And he turns to Nyx and he goes, how old are you? 13? You're nearly ready to be a bride yourself. And they go, okay, maybe this is not the avenue we hoped it would be to go down. And in fact, maybe we understand where Strahd comes from a little better now.
How did they get into their own tomb? Wasn't their tomb the one that was blocked off by the lawful good barrier?
Yeah, how did these creepers end up in a lawful good tomb?
Well, this is my thing, is that even though Nyx is a necromancer, she is extremely pure in the way that she goes about it. Oh, you're saying how did these people get in? Oh, yeah. Oh, because they were dead.
I see.
Yeah. Well, no, the only reason you put a lawful good barrier on your tomb is to keep out grave robbers.
Mommy?
it's not any kind of referendum on what kind of people are do we want in our company here. It's just that we want lawful good people to come in and clean the place up and pat us gently on the head and make sure that our preserving spells are working correctly, and anybody else can just fuck off. But yeah, clearly these people are not very politically correct and not very up to where we would hope they would be. So we short rest here. We finish the short rest and we take them out, and the preservative magic is only on this room. So as soon as Queen Ravenovi and King Barov walk out, they start going again. And we make our way up to the other tomb off north here, which is the tomb of Sergei. This is Alpha making it here for the first time. And they are able to gain entry, and they open up the crypt, and they find that Sergei's body is in here, magically preserved from the day of his death. So, Nyx raises Sergei as a zombie. I've specifically said to them that Sergei is a handsome, blonde, muscular man, and could they go on the internet and find an image to represent him as a character? And within, I would say, 5 seconds, Kayla has sent me this. So, this is what we're going with. And
Kayla's my favorite.
He is going to be journeying with us now. I was remiss in saying that most of Nyx's Corgi zombies were unfortunately destroyed in the battle with Strahd. I think we may still have one hopping around with us, but this is to...
Quite a few fireballs.
Yeah, this is to replenish the numbers that we lost during that encounter. And so now we have Strahd's entire preserved zombified family accompanying us. So Sergei, I think, gets to continue wearing his own armor. I don't know that anybody took it from him. I don't recall that now. I don't know that anybody even could.
Wearing it, yeah.
Yeah, so we have one zombie with fantastic armor class walking around. This is a +2 plate that he's wearing.
None of us could wear that.
Yeah. And we continue on. This is our party as we see it. And this whole time, Van Richten is continuing to feel this blowing of cold air sporadically. And it seems to be blowing in the direction of the northeast part of the crypts. So understandably, we avoid that entire area and leave as quickly as we can. What has happened is this is Daniel's ghost, which has been flying around through the crypts here trying to find stuff and has located the two things in here. One of them will... actually, do I have a slide for that later on? Or do I want to talk about it now? I think...
Because we skipped over us getting the
yes, that's true. Yeah, Prime did find this. So I'll talk now about what this even is. But there's something else down here I want to talk about too. I don't think I have a future slide for it. Yeah, so he's found two things down here. One of them is the thigh bone of St. Markovia in the very northeastern crypt, which does have a trap out front of it, where if you step on a pressure plate in front of the door, it shoots needles at you. There is the Tomb of St. Markovia. If this name is familiar, it's because the abbey in Krezk is named after her. She was a very holy person, and if you go into her crypt, her ghost appears and says, "Take what remains of my body and use this relic to free this land." The only part of her body that is still in weaponizable condition is her thigh bone, a holy relic. For one fight, this acts as a disruptive mace. It's basically an improvised weapon that does a bunch of extra damage to vampires, and then at the end of the fight crumbles away. So it's a one-shot kind of holy weapon. The other thing that Daniel found is in a tomb that is of one of the Mardukov ancestors from the Winemakers Guild. This is the tomb of a guild member, which, if that sounds familiar, it's because it was written on one of the cards that Alpha drew at the beginning of this campaign.
I've been looking for that one for the entire game.
And the Amulet of Ravenkind is in that tomb.
Oh my god.
So we leave the crypt and never return. And we, having walked within 5 feet of it, never get... We fully rolled to not have a fated ally in Alpha, and then we just never got one of the artifacts that we did roll for.
Well, we had entered a situation where
needs it?
we just kept checking these crypts, and they were like, we just weren't getting anything of import out of them. Like, not they all seemed like, ooh, there was some like gold or something. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
we
whatever.
put like a lot of effort into seeing more of the crypts. We like talked about it. We're like, let's see more. You never know, and then we just
kept finding like kiss, and then when Strahd left, he was also like, I'm gonna now you fucked up. Now I'm gonna go marry Irina now, and we're like, we don't have time to explore anything else.
Well, okay, so it is true also, though, that one of the other pieces of information Escher gave you was he said, I think you have more than an hour before, like from when your short rest ends, I think you have more than an hour before this wedding happens. Strahd is taking time to prepare some things. So you have a little bit of time if there's something else you need to do. Not enough to long rest, surely, and maybe not even enough to short rest, but you'll have to see. So we may not have trusted what Escher said in that moment. He was telling the truth. But he gave some sense of a timeline, like, yes, make haste, but like, you don't break your backs doing it. But at the same time, we don't know how long things are going to take. And we've explored so much of this crypt. Surely the like 2 crypts we haven't poked our heads into don't have the absolute most powerful treasures in this entire complex. So anyway, we venture forth from there, and Daniel's frustrated ghost follows as best as he can. Alpha goes fully just upstairs that they haven't explored and finds their way into the libraries of Strahd, where so much has happened. They do some adventuring around here, and they've been told by Escher that there is a secret door on this level behind which there is a treasure vault. So they find a different secret door and go through it and never come back. It was the wrong secret door, and they never come back and look for another one. They did look in the correct room and rolled very low and didn't find it. So we never find the treasure vault, and we never find all of the incredible weapons within it, and we will later reminisce about how useless Escher was. But
he was lying.
Yeah,
he was clearly lying.
He was a big dirty bastard. So following this other secret door, it winds us downstairs to another level where we come into an old bed chamber, and dusting in here is this kind of drawn-looking woman dressed as a maid, and she responds very enthusiastically to the party suddenly appearing, saying, "Oh, thank goodness, adventurers, heroes, please help me escape from here." We didn't have really specific art from her in the game, but I found somebody had this fan art of her, so I'm using this for the slides here. But she says, "My name is Helga," except I accidentally said Helgia when I was introducing her, and everybody roasted me forever. So in this game, she's now named Helgia. And she says, "Strahd kidnapped me from Barovia Village, and he forces me to work cleaning the castle all day and night. Please help me escape." She is such an obvious damsel that it's too convenient to be true. So we do some insight checks on her. We do kind of mid to bad, and we're still suspicious of her. And we say like, well, tell us a little bit about the castle, and a little bit about things, and we're reminiscing about what a useless person Escher was. What can you know us about him? And she says, "Oh, Escher, he's such a dreadful slut." And they go, "Okay, we like you and we trust you now automatically. Come with us." And we wind our way back to the chapel. We know from our card that this is where our final encounter with Strahd is going to be, but we still think we have some time probably, and we want to check in on what's going on there. And we do find that, in fact, things have developed since we've been away. The abbot is here by himself. Vasilka is nowhere to be seen. And when they ask him what's going on, he says, "Well, I sent her away, and here's why. Not very long ago, Strahd appeared in this chamber, and he said, 'Oh, Jesus, it's you. What do you want?' And the abbot filled him in started to fill him in on his plan for why he was here. And Strahd said, 'You know what? I don't care. It doesn't matter. What matters is this. I'm going to come back here in a while, and I'm going to have with me my bride, and you are going to marry us. Okay?' And the abbot goes, 'Yes, absolutely. You have a bride lined up for this?' And Strahd goes, 'Yes, I'll be back soon with that. I just want to make sure everything was okay here.' And the abbot goes, 'Oh, yes, absolutely. Vasilka, go down those stairs over there and just walk until you find like a corner or something and stand there forever. And so the abbot is standing here, and he has been thinking about this, and realizing now that all the work he did with Vasilka wasn't even necessary. Strahd has this bride lined up. This is the culmination of his plan. We have made it to where we wanted to be. But as the party comes in, he says, like, hey, you've been playing ball with me so far. Are you going to be a problem for this, or are you going to allow this to happen? And he gets the sense from them pretty quickly that this is not something they want to allow to happen. And he tries, like, 1, maybe 2 times to try to talk them out of it. But seeing that they are resolute and knowing how little time there is, he decides it is up to him to make this wedding go forward. This is kind of a stressful moment here because we've been pulling the abbot along with us this whole time in the hopes that maybe we could make something of him and, like, you know, see how things played out or maybe turn him into an ally somehow. But we've kind of reached the point by now where it seems like that ship has sailed. Like, and I'll say as a dungeon master, I don't really know that there was one moment where things like really could have worked out differently. Certainly if you can do a lot to show to the abbot that he is misguided, like make good arguments and give good evidence and stuff, you could pull him away from his way of thinking. Possibly, like, the adventure kind of lays in that that's something you, like, we won't say it's impossible, but the expectation is, like, he has spent centuries in this kind of madness. He's very committed to this vision, because what's been happening is that this astral deva came to Barovia centuries ago, after the Abbey of St. Markovia fell. Realizing what had become of this land, he wanted to try to heal it, and he tried talking with Strahd back then and convincing him, and Strahd was like, you know, I've this curse that neither of us can do anything about, and also, you know, I'm the Lord here and I'm not going to listen to you, but maybe you should busy yourself actually trying to improve the quality of life of people here. I don't mind you being here and helping people as long as you stay out of my way. The abbot was resolved to settle this situation with words, so he backed off for now and thought, well, okay, well, I will try to make something good of myself here, and maybe while I'm doing that, I can come up with a way to talk Strahd into some kind of situation that resolves all of this. But in his time in Barovia, he became corrupted by certain ideas, because there's all these corrupting influences here. Among them are the mongrel folk, the Bellevues, who at that time were the kind of the servant family, kind of a large servant family to the Zareviches. And they had always been kind of on, like, really far down the totem pole, like the kind of people that nobles would kick around. And so one of them gets the idea. He's like, I want to be more powerful. I want to, like, be more than human. Like, as a human, I can't make it. I want you, abbot, with your great knowledge of things, to help me find a way to be more powerful. And his idea of how to make this happen was like, what if I had, like, beast body parts? What if I was, like, a monster guy? And the abbot was like, you know, my instinct is to help people. And at this point, his instincts have been corrupted by the presence of Barovia enough that he's like, well, if this is what you want, if I can help you by doing this, then I owe it to you to try. And this is the source of the visions that Lucian had as a ghost exploring the Abbey of St. Markovia, was the abbot trying to help the Bellevues, who were just kind of like crazy, bitter people at that time, to augment themselves with bestial stuff, but being modified into mongrel folk only made them crazier. Like, the few of them that you did converse with are by far the most cogent, because most of them are those slobbering, ravenous ones that are kept in those cells throughout the abbey. It was absolutely not something that worked out, and because they descended in this condition, the abbot kind of thought, well, as their caretaker, I owe it to them to stay here and, you know, guard for them and everything, as he continues to try to think of ways to resolve this situation. But there has been kind of this energy working away at his mind and directing his good intentions toward nefarious purposes, to the extent that it has made him fully evil without him even realizing it. He still thinks of himself as a very pure being. And if he could be confronted with this truth, perhaps he'd have enough of a conflict internally that he would at least back down from doing things. But at this time and in this place where he sees that this goal that he's had in mind for a long time is within grasp, he decides to commit to it. These black wings, these feathered wings, sprout from his back. He summons a mace into his hand, and he joins battle with the party. And in a twist that absolutely nobody saw coming, Helgia suddenly bites Lucian upon the neck from behind, revealing herself a vampire spawn. And the party does battle with these two beings who, it only lasts a few rounds, and we do destroy both of them at the end of it. But they do a lot of damage, and a lot of the damage that Lucian takes, because he keeps failing saves, is to his maximum hit points from the drain that a vampire will do when she sucks your blood. And we know that we only have time for a short rest, perhaps, before Strahd returns with the intent to hold his wedding. It's at this point that we hit level 10. And we realize that it's time to finish this game. Up in Prime, we finish our short rest here. We're making preparations of different sorts. Sir Godfrey has one charge left on his holy symbol of Ravenkind. We've used the other one. One of them against Escher and the Brides. We used one of them in the fight in the tower against the vampire spawn there. So we're going to try to make that one count if we can. We have this time now for Dr. Flint, who last saw his old Hellbender sliding down a trap chute into a dungeon beneath the castle. We build a new Hellbender, and we're able to do it with parts from Strahd's animated armor, which when Shava was going to be raised, they destroyed it while she was possessing it. And so we have Hellbender now crackling with electrical energy the way that the animated armor was. Cinder, who has a bonus action to give herself a bite attack, takes this magic item, Oil of Sharpness, and spreads it on her teeth to make her teeth, to give her teeth a +3 enhancement, I believe. And now that counts as a magic attack where it didn't before. And Shava has returned from the dead. And as a warlock, all her spell slots are back on a short rest, much less a long rest. And she has the Sword of Sunlight, and she's very pissed off, and she also has a little Jester here accompanying her this whole time. Talks his...
And I'm now completely immune to being charmed, and can now charm people right back if they try.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is
I was
also...
super excited about.
Yeah, this is also when I realized that I had a level 9 ability that I completely forgotten about, where when I make attacks, I can heal people for free, which I totally could have done for Shava when I was beating up that part. And I don't think that would have stopped her from dying, but maybe it would have stopped her from trying to come next to me in hopes that I would heal with an actual spell slot, which I did not do because I didn't think it could possibly be enough to help.
That, or it might have kept me from going to, like, all the way to dead. Like, I might have made it to, like, not
because I had a bunch of uses, so if I had just, like, been healing you, like, every time I attacked the heart, that might have been enough. Or you might have just not been on the edge. Like, a lot of things could have been slightly different. No. It might have been enough.
We give Ismark the Mace of Terror that we recovered earlier, and he is set on finding Irina and saving her from all of this. Tox is full back up on all of his sorcerer spell slots and is level 10 now, so we have multiple 5th level slots, I believe. Oh boy. And the Martikovs are with us, and they spend some time while we're doing the short rest, flying around actually and scouting out this location where we know we're going. They have flown around the back of the castle and looked in some area slits, and they're able to say, okay, when you go through that secret door and you go past those giant spiders that stopped you earlier, it looks like there's a belfry back in there. Only a very tiny creature could fit through the arrow slits and get in there. So we don't think that's a good way forward for the party. Plus, you have to be flying to even make it there. But there is some kind of space back there, and we didn't see anything other than that, so maybe there's more doors or secret doors or something we don't know. But there's a belfry and there are bats in the belfry, and we can tell you that much at least. And they give the party the option. They say, would you like us to come with you? We are not really fighters, but we are immune to most physical damage, and with our talents we could be useful, or if we wanted us to deliver a message to somebody, we could fly away and certainly make it. It's kind of up to you how you would like to use this. And Prime does invite them to come with them on the final battle, so they elect to do that. Van Richten, kind of spent as he was by the decision not to raise Esmeralda, is clearly sitting this one out. He does the long rest with all of them, but he remains behind in these rooms with Esmeralda's body to keep watch over it, and there's nothing within him that he seems up to joining this fight. So we head toward the final battle with Ismark, who definitely won't sit out because his sister is at peril. We have the Mardikovs, who have just been saved, and we've requested they stay with us. And we have our fated ally, Sir Godfrey, as we head to the final encounter. In Alpha, in the chapel, we have Nyx with her 3 animated undead members of Strahd's family. We have the Sword of Sunlight in the hands of somebody whose animation I put at way the wrong moment, so they'll appear at a certain point. But we also have Peregrine, who's back. She's, mad about all the stuff she's been through in this castle, with Strahd picking on her in particular. We've got Helper rebuilt and ready to go to give us temporary hit points. At level 10, Lucian gets the ability to craft a little homunculus guy, which he makes the doll of Strahd that we bought in Vallaki from Gadolf Blinsky like 2.5 years ago. So this little doll is now like a tiny creature that can like run around and shoot lasers from its eyes, which is something that we suddenly have to learn the mechanics around.
The diamond into it.
Yeah. It is Action, here he is, who is holding the Sun Sword and ready to use it. Ismark, we've given some kind of better weapon to, and he is fully with us, still ready to go. And, of course, we have Luke as Rudolph Van Richten steeling himself for this final battle. We are short resting and waiting as we believe that Strahd will come as soon as we are done. A suspicion that turns out to be correct. We only have a little bit of time left here before 9:30, so I'm just going to crawl through a little more scene setting because I think we're going to need it for giving ourselves the maximum amount of time next time.
Oh, it should also be noted that Lucian has marker all over his face for the entire rest of the story.
Still at this point?
Not
I thought
represented on this icon, but yes.
I thought we got rid of it at this point.
Nope.
Did we not?
Never.
Oh, that's my bad.
Not until the after game or whatever.
Okay.
Until somebody is kind enough to tell him when he leaves Barovia.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a little bit of stage setting. This is where we get to the final battle for both parties. And this is just another quirk of how like timing works out. We were doing these final battles basically at the same time for the two groups. Like within... we were like leapfrogging sessions around each other, but I think we both started in April of this year and finished in May or June of this year. After everything else that happened, we still ended up kind of in the same place at the same time. So for Prime, where the secret door is it's behind the fireplace in the library. You can find it by getting a good enough check while searching that room. You can like go and try to push your way through, which will just like, burn you some. So this is actually, if you can see my cursor, like this whole thing is fireplace. It's actually got a pretty huge interior to the extent that they draw this whole map for it. So you'll take fire damage every round that you're in here, but the back wall of this is a revolving door that you can get through. There is also a poker that if you like go to pick it up, it's actually a lever that just activates the door and it spins around. So Prime does whatever shuffle they need to do to get back in here. There is a chamber with a fake treasure chest, which is really just a trap that had the poison gas that paralyzed Shava. If that gas like paralyzes your whole party, then eventually the witches, if they are still alive, come and find you and drag you paralyzed off to their tower and prepare to like do funky, stupid experiments on you. So that's where you wake up and come to your senses. That's also true if you were in the elevator trap in Alpha, the one that all the zombies set off. So if it had been you guys instead of them who went up a locked elevator and then had poison gas all over you, you would have been dragged, paralyzed by witches to their laboratory from there. Which I think is the best possible outcome to any kind of like full party trap like that. We have a few giant spiders that we have to smack through in this big room on the way in here, but kind of the layout here is that we have a big open space. There is a secret door here that actually leads to the elevator shaft of the trap I was just mentioning. That's how you, it continues to go up from here, but it is just a shaft that if you can fly, you can just use this to navigate levels of the castle. We don't find the secret door, but this is how Strahd enters the battlefield later. Spoiler alert. We come through these doors. There's a big belfry in this later space. There are bats up around the bell. And there is a door here, which is supposed to be a secret door. And I don't remember if I made a secret door or if I just made it a visible door, because I thought we're at the point where we're just skipping that or something. But if it was secret, you guys found it like immediately. And this chamber is Strahd's treasure vault, which again, we had this situation in Prime where they drew 2 cards where they had 2 things that were supposed to be in this vault. Like, one is that this is where you fight Strahd in your final encounter, and the other one is that the Tome of Strahd is also here. And that was a screwy enough situation that I did a lot of bending over backwards to put the Tome of Strahd somewhere else, but it involved taking the instant fortress that is supposed to be here and putting it in that place to sell it better, and also because there's supposed to be an instant fortress in this room, which would take up most of the room and really make it difficult to navigate. So I changed this map. I used this map instead of the one given by the adventure because it is not as obvious that this is supposed to be an instant fortress. I thought I could put a ladder here and sell it as a pit instead of an instant fortress, and I think I pulled it off. So this is a money pit instead. So this is the arena that we would have for Prime's fight. To put some markers in, they kind of come into this place and see that there are some things going on before some things develop. As we come in and we look down this money pit, Irina is here. This is where Strahd has stashed her, thinking that this is the most secure place in the castle and that she will be safe here while he runs and does other things to prepare for the wedding. So she is here fully charmed, down amongst the gold coins. And Ismark instantly beelines it for her. He is going to try to make her snap out of whatever's going on. But as he reaches her, swarms of rats bubble up from among the gold coins and attack him and anyone else who would go for Irina and try to interface with this. She stands by and simply watches as this goes on, and he uses his Mace of Terror to try to bat the rats away. Emerging as gas through the arrow slits, a number of vampire spawn come in from where they were climbing at the outside of the tower. And also many swarms of bats descend from the belfry upon the party. And this all happens at about the time that Dr. Flint, with his see invisibility, rolls good enough perception to notice that Strahd, as gas, has come in from a secret door invisibly behind them, and is about to enact a surprise round, which he, I think, does get on. I think actually maybe he's still got it on Dr. Flint. I think Dr. Flint, you had see invisibility, and so I had you roll perception, and it still wasn't good enough, but I was like, well, you still see some things first. You're still part of this surprise round, but I'm going to try to make it seem like you have an advantage of some kind. So Strahd ambushes the party in that way as his minions come from different directions, and he is hoping to cut off the party's escape. This is a pretty boxed-in arena compared to what Alpha will experience. In Alpha, we have the chapel. I've taken this map because it was easy to kind of flip it around and make it fit on this slide. As they finish their short rest, the door at the first floor of the chapel opens, and Irina walks in. And this is our first time seeing her since she's been captured, but she has been dressed up as Tatiana. She is dressed in white, prepared for her wedding, and she seems obviously charmed, and she is saying things like, do not resist Strahd, this is for the best. And as she is saying this, Strahd has invisibly entered the room and is choosing his vantage point. He is choosing where he wants to strike, what he wants his first target to be. As he is lining this up, the stained glass windows at either end burst inward, and we have swarms of bats that appear. They were also at the other end, which I seem to have failed to put on this slide. And Strahd decides that his surprise round action will be casting animate objects to animate the suits of armor that are on this map turning them into animated suits of armor. Oh, there's the other bats. Here they are. And then Strahd goes in and starts striking with greater invisibility in melee. We are at 9:30 here, so I want to just do one more slide and then take a stopping point. I think that hopefully next time we can finish up entirely just talking about our fights with Strahd and then everything that happened afterwards to the epilogue of this game. So I'm hoping we can get through it in one shot next time. So to set the scene for this, for Strahd, I gave him about the same tactics and the same preparations for both parties. Greater invisibility is on his spell list. I gave him Fire Shield and had him use it to cast Chill Shield. What this does is that anytime somebody hits you, you take ice damage. Also, if they try to hit you with fire, you're going to take half damage. One of those is a concentration spell. The other one just lasts for 10 minutes. So those are buffs that can pretty easily be stacked. And he would come in. And my plan was to be pretty hardline with Strahd. I had these... I wanted to come in and make it seem like he was a tactical force and was, really going to take the gloves off and hit hard in this fight. I wanted him to be very aggressive to try to make the parties defensive by putting them on the back foot immediately so that hopefully they'd spend rounds running to safety or healing themselves, and so they wouldn't all be ganging up on him. He has the potential to be very mobile, so he's going to use his legendary actions. He can use them to hit you more, but he's going to prioritize using them to run away from people. Like something he could do and did in Prime is he would run up to people on his turn, hit them twice, and then when it was not his turn, he would hit them twice with legendary actions, and then his final legendary action, he would run away right before it was their turn. Or maybe he would run away twice with legendary actions, so they could not on their turn even run after him and reach him. Because he really doesn't want multiple people being able to do full round attacks on him or anything like that. So I wanted to come in pretty strong with these and hit as hard as I could. But I also know that, he's a pretty scary force, and sometimes you want to do certain things just to keep things fun. So I wanted to add some gentle touches, one of which being I did scan everybody's hit points before the fights to see, especially Alpha, because they were just coming out of a short rest. They'd already been through some fights, so I wanted to know, is there anybody who would just go down in a couple hits or anybody who could stand up? So I focused Peregrine a lot early on in that fight because I found out that Peregrine was still at max hit points and has a fuck ton of hit points, as it turns out. So, and it also made sense given their history that Strahd would go for Peregrine first because has been measuring Peregrine and her resilience and everything. So I took that as a license to go try to beat the shit out of Peregrine as much as I could early on. And otherwise, where you have other allies like Godfrey and people like that, I wanted to try to do as much damage to them to show off what Strahd could do. He wants to make people afraid and in awe of his force so that they don't come as aggressively at him. And also, I didn't actually want to knock anybody out immediately and then have them out for parts of this final fight. It would probably be in Strahd's better interest just to take out weaker people at the start to trim the numbers down, but I specifically was not going to do that. And then also another gentle touch that I added was that I was unable to find his list of lair actions. Lair actions are a mechanic in 5th edition that some bosses have where if you fight them on their turf, it gives them magical benefits. And I really could have sworn that Strahd had these. Or really I could have sworn that vampires had these. And then I couldn't find them in the bestiary and I couldn't find them in his stat block. It was only while preparing for this slideshow that I found them on the page before his stat block. So on every initiative count 20 once per round, he had a special ability he could have done, like just phase through a wall or summon a wraith to fight for him and all kinds of other things like that. So I'm a little bummed that I didn't do them, but I feel like we got enough out of this already. So
I'm not bummed.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
I think everything worked out just fine. So these were the tactics. These were the situations coming in. In this final fight, he would have a bunch of other allies fighting with him to harry and distract his opponents. In Prime, we have a pretty small kind of kill box room, but with some verticality to it. In Alpha, we have a big old chapel with a balcony level that people can go between. So that has some verticality as well. And this is what we came into for the final fights. So that's where I'm going to stop it here for tonight, I think, because this is the good stopping point before getting into this stuff properly. We are at slide 390 out of 439. So we will see.
Why do you have? Why so many more slides?
Those are the last slides. I have finished this PowerPoint finally.
Somehow I don't believe you, and there's going to be even more next time.
How do you have that many more slides, though?
Mm-hmm. I can hear Kayla calling my name IRL. Hello, Kayla. What's up?
All right.
Oh, I'll help you find it. I'm finishing up here. And that's where we're going to stop for tonight. Thank you all so much.
Can't wait to hear what happens.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Love you all. Have a great game. Bye.
Good night.